Is there any such thing as a stable and happy INFP? Do they exist? Welcome to Brain vs. Heart. Someone left a comment in one of the other videos, and I want to thank you guys again for being so honest with your feedback and for leaving your thoughts and questions. So somebody seemed to be very surprised because as an INFP, I seem stable and balanced, and they're asking, how as an INFP have you come to find peace with yourself? Well, I can tell you through a lot of experience and a lot of heartache. I want to start by saying that even though there are some personality types that are more predisposed to being unstable or unhappy or taking things personally, everyone is a human being, and based on your experiences or trauma or things that have happened to you, your emotions are going to be built around that. I've met very passionate yet stable and level-headed INFPs who are much older, and I've also met very unstable INTJs and INFJs. I think I've just about met every personality type, and I think I was pretty spot on with the different ones, even though with some, it seems a bit harder to tell because of their circumstance. You'll have somebody who is an INTJ, but because of abandonment issues or constant hurt in the past, when they're in a relationship, it can cause them to behave like an INFJ or a lot more emotional or needy than they usually would have been if they were functional. Unfortunately, because of experiences, most people are dysfunctional in some way, shape, or form because this thing happens to us called life. And life is built with pleasant experiences met by horrible experiences. And for us to have more pleasant experiences, which is something we're always chasing after, hence the phrase, the pursuit of happiness, we have to go through horrible experiences. For example, if you want to build the ultimate car or PC or whatever type of machine, you have to put it through the ultimate stress test. And humans are no different. Now, I think why people ask this about INFPs is that they tend to be very, very emotional. The thing is, when people think about INFPs being emotional, they think about people who are screaming on the sidewalks, being activists for causes that other people see as noble, but in the way they're acting, it's probably not that serious, or it doesn't warrant the overbearing emotion that they inundate people with. And I find that INFPs can be very terrible people if they are spoiled. If they have been raised to think the whole world is their oyster, it is very possible for the demon side of them to come out when they think they're fighting for a cause. And anybody else who is against that cause is somehow hurtful to the people for whom they're fighting that happen to be wrapped up in that cause. And this falls in the whole emotional spectrum, those who think with their feelings and less with their head. Now, what I'm going to be giving you are 8 reasons why I'm considered a stable person. Bear in mind, I am by no stretch a perfect person. Every time we are growing, we are still fixing and learning. There are a lot of things about myself that I could definitely fix and get better at. But there was a time where I was unstable, very, and it had to do with who I was as a person and a result of my environmental pressures. But now I'm at a place where I can breathe, and I can with confidence say that I am stable. Who knows, 4 years from now I might not be because something horrible might happen. Recently, both my parents had COVID, thank goodness. They're both clear, they quarantined, and they got better. I'm so happy for that. But if I had lost them, or at least lost my father, I would have become very unstable. I know that I would. And having just lost my grandmother recently to it, well, that would have been one of those situations where I would be unstable for a while. Another thing I want to say before going into my reasons is that it's not bad to be unstable. There are times and reasons why you might be unsteady, but it's important that you don't stay there for the majority of your life. Sometimes you have to be unstable for you to get to the next point of your life. But anyway, so here are the reasons why I'm currently mature, at least by society standards, sort of, and stable, as this person put it, and right now at peace. The first thing is, and it's very controversial, is that my parents disciplined me. I come from a culture where parents discipline their kids. I was very shocked when I came to the US and saw how some kids spoke to their parents. And it's not that speaking to your parents or letting them know how you feel is necessarily a bad thing. It's the disrespect. And I found that most of those kids, as they grew up, were very unhappy. And half of those kids turned out to point the blame at their parents for not doing a better job. And I am so thankful, especially to my mom, for raising me the way she did. The next reason is because I embrace everyone, even people that other people hated. I don't get the whole, this person is this, so we must hate them, or this person's that, so we must hate that person. I find that there's so much energy, unnecessary loss of energy expenditure that is geared towards hating other people or ostracizing other people for their religious background, for their political views, for the way they look. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I have never found more bitter, unsuccessful, and terribly unstable people than the people who are overly emotional because someone doesn't agree with them, or because they don't like someone else because of either where they came from or because they have disagreement. There has to be a lot of turmoil within your self-esteem or who you are as a person to actively go out of your way to hate other people. And I don't know if that's an INFP trait where we just accept everyone. There's a lot of INFPs I know also that have been indoctrinated and brainwashed to hate other people as well, and they do it passionately thinking that they're the heroes. But I don't have time for that. And ever since I was growing up, maybe it's a product of my environment from my country, but I accepted everyone. If there was someone who was drastically different than I was in views or physical appearance, it made me more curious about that person to hear their different perspectives. I love taking in new information. The third reason is, this is my personal reason, I got away from religion. I did grow up Christian, and that religion, I'm not going to say everything was bad about it, but it was very cultish. Most of the time, the book that we study, the Bible, or people who evangelized and taught us, were spending most of the time telling us how sinful we were and how everything was wrong with us because of something two people did a long time ago, and how at any moment God was going to come back, and just the whole thing around it made you hate yourself. To me, it's not any different than those people who kneel down and take one of those cat o' nine tail belts and beat themselves while praying to God. Except that we're not doing it physically, we're doing it emotionally. And there are a lot of people who I find in religions are so broken when they're hyper-religious because they no longer have an identity. That's what usually happens in cults or religious groups that make everything centered around the idol or the God that they're worshiping. And I found that I was very unhappy most of the time because even when I was myself, or if I had sexual desires or had a crush on someone, or I did something that the Bible said you're not supposed to do, or that the people who worship God said you're not supposed to do, I would spend all that time, especially because, I'm an INFP, we overthink things, just hating myself and being ashamed and unhappy, and it's one of those situations where you're set up to fail, because even when you are good and you stay good, you're human, so you will mess up. You're gonna think about that guy when you're playing with yourself. You're not even supposed to do that, but you have feelings. It's like, why did you make me this way? And then make it like impossible. You had to basically kill who you are. Kill your identity, kill your feelings, kill your carnal desires. Everything that makes you human has to be stripped away. And INFPs, there's something you'll know about them. They do not like being told that they have to do something. They will do something when they know they need to do something. But if somebody else is telling them that they need to do something just because, it doesn't sit very well with us. We also don't like routine. So getting up and reading my Bible every single day and then not doing it one day or skipping it a whole week made me depressed. That was always an up and down emotional thing. And as soon as I started realizing what was happening and I stopped sweating over it, at that time I was an atheist, but I stopped sweating over it so much, I didn't care. And people would come at me and say, well, you're being too lax. You can't be a lukewarm Christian. And I stopped thinking about what they said. I'm like, well, that's why you're suffering so much. And that's why a lot of you have chronic depression and issues, because you're always sweating over it. I watch my mom, even now, be totally depressed and tell me with her own mouth that if she doesn't have God, she has nothing. She doesn't know who she is if she finds out there's no God. And that made me so sad. And when I finally walked away from all of it, I was no longer forced to go to church. I'm literally living my life. And the only thing I'm concerned with is making myself better and helping the people that I love. I was totally free. That was a huge portion of it for me. There was immense peace that came from that. And I know some religious people are going to probably say, yeah, well, that's because you're happy that you're sinning, because that's what they teach us. But is it really sinning? What am I doing that's so wrong except being myself? I figured that if there really is a God and he exists, he would not be so cruel as to make you go against your nature, make you a certain way, and then punish you for all eternity for being what he made you. So that didn't make any sense to me. And as you know, when you start logically thinking about things and not with just your heart and your emotions, you start to find a lot of peace that way. So the next reason is I got hurt. I got heartbroken a lot. There is nothing that can ground you in reality like pain. Pain is a very interesting tool. It's a very interesting teacher. There are some people who have never felt pain. They were grown up thinking they were special and nothing could ever hurt them, and they were the most fairest of them all. I know that was redundant. Most and fairest. Fairest. I hate when people do that, and I just did it. Sorry. But when you get rejected, you get humbled. And I think that's why a lot of people are having problems in their older ages, because they have never been humbled. They've never been told no. And I'm so glad that my parents told me no. I'm so glad for all the horrible experiences I had. I know it sounds weird, but for all the guys I dated that hurt me, I don't even have anything against them, because they were young and I was young and they weren't ready to commit, and I didn't understand how to read the signs. Some of them were assholes, but they were still young and they were learning. And most of those guys, when they grow up, they realize, wow, I was kind of an asshole back then. I'm sorry. And even if they don't apologize, they were still learning experiences. I take every heartbreak and every horrible thing that happened to me as a child as a learning experience. Even being molested as a child, growing up until I was in my teens, I learned what to look out for, how to stay safer, and how to help other people. Surely when I was 3.5 years old, I couldn't control the first time that happened to me, but I don't feel bad about it. And I don't even feel bad talking about it, because I know there are a whole bunch of other people out there who are unstable and not at peace because this happened to them. And it makes me happy that it happened to me, because now I can show other people, hey, I went through that. Several people molested me, and I was just a baby. I was literally a baby at that time. And I know what it feels like to have thought it was your fault, to not want to get those people in trouble. I have forgiven everybody who did that to me. Everyone. And I let it go. Because one thing that you have to realize is when someone has hurt you, and you hang on to that bitterness, or you blame everything on them, you are still giving them the power. They've hurt you physically, but now you're making them hurt you emotionally and mentally. And that was just not my MO. I know that everyone is different and not everyone's gonna cycle through it the same way, but that's one thing I was happy about with the religion, was that they taught forgiveness. But even before I understood what that was, or before I was taught that, I already had learned to forgive people. Sometimes to a fault, because as I got older, you learn that you can't forgive and trust everyone, because, well, they'll take advantage of you. And I got hurt a few times with that as well. And that helped me make me a better person, because I knew I can be compassionate, but I have to learn when to not be too compassionate and learn how to read people. So that is the fourth reason. The fifth reason why I am at peace and more stable is because whenever I'm having a debate with people who are different, I suppress my emotions when listening to them or taking in new information. One of the things that people seem to get caught up in is they start to take things too personally when people are debating with them. Now, I will admit that if I'm in a romantic relationship like I am with my husband, and I don't know we're debating, I may get a little bit more emotional with him, because it just hurts more, because it's coming from someone that you love. But if I realize that we're actively in a debate, or I realize, wow, we're debating, my logic brain kicks on, because I realize that that's not coming from a place he's not trying to hurt me. But then the weird thing happens, the more logical I become when debating is the more emotional he becomes. So then he gets upset. So I'm like, you're an ITJ, this is what you like. Yeah, but I don't like it when you're so cold. That's what he said. I'm like, how am I being cold? Like, that's literally, I don't get it, but whatever. But it is helpful. I've had some people who actively tried to piss me off. Like when I was a Christian, there was a satanic guy, and he said he was satanic. He looked like he was satanic. And he said things to me, and I saw the sneer in his face. He was trying to make me uncomfortable and trying to piss me off, and it wasn't working. Because honestly, I was intrigued. I've never met an actual Satanist before. I mean, in our religion, they had taught us that anybody who doesn't worship God, it doesn't matter if you go to Africa or Syria or all those other places and build churches and schools there, if you don't believe in God, despite all of the deeds that you've done, you're going to hell and you worship Satan. So I wanted to know what it actually meant. Like, I was intrigued, and I would ask him questions about what he believed, why he did that, and how does it feel, and how did he get there? But he was deflecting the questions because he wanted to ask me why I believed in God. Like, his aim was to make me uncomfortable. So he was asking me all these questions about why God did this, and do I realize the Bible doesn't make sense? And at the time, I considered myself very spiritual. So I told him, honestly, you're right, that really doesn't make any sense, and I don't have an answer for that. I've actually asked that question too. And I think, this is the answer I gave him, that man wrote the Bible, but they don't really know God as he's meant to be known. If his ways are higher than our ways, which is the scripture in the Bible, then how could we possibly know what he intended or what he actually said for us to write it in the Bible? That doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be so chaotic and confusing if God himself had written it and he's not the author of confusion. And I told him that. And he told me I am the first Christian person he's come across that, first of all, didn't run away at the sight of him, and second of all, is be willing to sit down and have a conversation. And he just instantly changed after that. And we sat there and we talked and we hung out for a while. And every day after school, we would sit and hang out and talk about philosophy. And I really enjoyed that time with him. I never once felt that demon was going to jump off of him and come on to me. And if I told my mom that what I was doing, she would have been so frightened. And she would have been like, no, don't talk. Unless you're trying to evangelize to him, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. So I find that that's very unhealthy. Because another thing that the religion had done, I know I already talked about religion, but I'm using it as an example. We were taught not to listen to people who were different. So people would have different information and would debate and ask and challenge us on our belief. And there are some people who said, yes, let them challenge you. But it's not like they were encouraging people to stand up and debate with unbelievers so we could get new information. It was like a test to make sure that you're founded in God, that they cannot shake you. So they basically taught us to cut our minds off to any new information or anything that wasn't exactly what we were taught from the Bible. And I just never was like that. I'm too harmonious for that. I'm like, no, I want to see everybody's point of view. We were taught that homosexuality was wrong and it was sinful. You're not supposed to be friends with gay people. And when I had moved from my country up to the States, I didn't know what gay was. I thought when guys talked that way and pretended to be girls, that was just their personality. And then when I found out later that they actually liked the same sex, I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I feel stupid now. I just thought they were elegant men, but it never bothered me. And the only thing that bothered me is I felt conflicted because I felt as though I was going to get punished or put in hell because I was friends with this person, which is kind of fucked up if you think about it. But I was willing to look at things through a different perspective. Instead of just parroting what I've been told to believe, I used my own eyes and ears to take in new information and line it up with what I already knew. I know that my way of thinking is not the only way of thinking out there. It's impossible for everything that I know, having been on the earth for so little time, to be all there is. So there must be people out there that have experienced things I haven't experienced, hence new information, hence me growing as a person and getting along with others. So that's one of the ways that I find peace. Just taking in new information and not being so emotional about it. Letting others be themselves. You can still be yourself and come together and learn together and share with each other. The fifth reason why I'm stable and at peace is I have imaginary friends and I have alternate worlds and dimensions in my head. I am hyper imaginative. It's insane. And I think if something happened to me and I got an illness, I would get dementia, or I would be one of those people that see shit all the time because my imagination is just so crazy. And that's why it's so important as an INFP that you foster your logical sense. Because if you are too emotional all the time and you have that hyper imagination, that can literally make you into a crazy person. You'll be a nice crazy person, but you'll still be a crazy person. And I think people like INFPs are more predisposed to that because of those two things. So I do have imaginary friends, I do have alternate worlds, and it is so wonderful to close my eyes, no matter where I am, and go to some distant planet or world that I've created where I have special powers, or I meet other people that have powers, and animals and creatures that can do magical things, and I'm having a whole feature film length adventure in my head. I have an ongoing story arc with my imaginary friends that I've been going on since I was like 4 or 5 years old. And it's just so wonderful. I feel like I've literally been on a vacation every time I come back from inside my mind. And people are right when they say that INFPs live inside their head. I personally live inside my head. Everything I see in the real world coincides with things in the worlds in my mind. I can't make that make sense. The only thing I can do is write my stories that way, and people can kind of understand where I'm coming from. But I know I sound crazy, but that is one of the reasons that gives me peace, because it makes me happy being able to go someplace else that I can't naturally go to in the real world, and talking to people that I have grown up with my entire life. I know they're not real. They're actually fragmented facets of me, but still, it makes me happy when I can share something with Sarah or with Victor, and I'm like, guys, guess what happened? And Victor is the INTJ, and Sarah's the ESTP, and all my other characters have these different personality types that clash with mine, and they'll challenge me on things. And I get that that's my brain's way of processing through things, but also enjoying life. It's great. Life on Earth is boring sometimes, even though it's wonderful. But alternate dimensions and fighting wraith monsters and programmed wraiths, like, that's so freaking awesome. Being able to train dragons, I'm gonna get away with myself. I'm sorry. Anyway, the other reason is I spend time with animals. Now, this is something that I've grown up with, because I've grown up with animals. I love animals to pieces. And when I look at my pets, or I look at any animal, I feel different. Like, they're animals, and other people look at them and say, wow, that's a finch. Okay, that's great, whatever. But I look at this animal, and all I think about is, what is it thinking? If I were to translate its experiences and its body language into a human language, English, that I could understand, what story would it tell? Where does it go? What must it feel like to fly? Or what must it feel like when a bird gets his voice for the first time and finds a song, or lays his eyes on a female that he likes? And I just think about that stuff. It's fascinating to me. As for my personal animals, my dogs and my rabbit and turtles and other animals that I have, I always have to have animals because I just love being around them. I love them. They're like my babies. And knowing that they depend on me and they love me unconditionally, it just makes me want to cry every time I see them. I hug them and kiss them every moment I get because it just means so much to me. They make me happy. And when I'm sad, my dogs, especially the little one, will come up to me and just lie down and pet me with his paws. It's the most weird thing ever. I've never seen a dog do that before. But I had lost one of my dogs, and he'll just pet my face, lie down on the bed beside me, and pet my face and lick my tears. Literally lick my tears. And the other little one that we have now starts doing kind of the same thing in her own little way. And you see their different personalities, and it just makes me so happy. Animals are amazing. I find animals way more fascinating than I do people. And so that also gives me peace, being around them, even though they drive me nuts sometimes. The seventh reason is I'm always creating. There are a lot of INFPs out there who are naturally creative, and the best that you could do is create. I write songs, I sing, I draw, I write stories, I play music, I play instruments. I do almost all the art forms. I know how to cook, but it's like my least favorite because I had to do it every single day for 10 people while I was growing up with my parents, so it's not something I exactly like, even though I do like when people enjoy my food. The culinary arts is not really the art form that I like, but I like painting and drawing and doing all the others, and I'm pretty good at it. And I feel like every time I create something, I'm forming a new world or opening up a portal to a new world. When I play on the piano and I close my eyes, I feel like the music is taking me somewhere. And that's when I watched the movie Soul and the guy was playing the piano and it took him to that place. That's the first time I've seen on the mainstream media somebody portray exactly what I was feeling, because that's how it feels. And after I open my eyes and I finish playing my piece, it's like I breathe a breath of fresh air. Because I feel like I was just taken somewhere else. It calms me down whenever I create, whenever I write lyrics and I sing my original music. I have composition notebooks full of musics and short poems and stories or worlds, bios for creatures I've made. It just makes me happy. I have to always be creating. If I'm not actively doing that, I'm gaming, which I guess could be creating because whenever I play video games, I always imagine that I'm an actual character or my imaginary friends are with me in this world and we're experiencing it completely different from what the storyline is saying. And that's what helps with the replayability for me. So that's one of the things that makes me feel totally at peace. All right, and the next one, I'll say it's the last one on this list. This is just the ones I could think off the top of my head, and this is extremely important for me personally as an INFP. It's being alone, finding ways to be alone. I have worked in retail, I have worked on the farm, and the best job that I've had, aside from working from home right now, is when I was working at the farm. Because there were many acres separating you and other people. I would just harvest and weed, and I was doing physical work, but I felt so good doing it because I could listen to my audiobooks, and I could just be alone and not have to talk to people. One of the most stressful things for me is being around people, and I don't know, it's become increasingly a problem. I mean, I don't know if it's, I guess some people will say, oh, it's kind of social anxiety, but I love people from a distance. I'll be willing to help someone from a distance, but I don't want to be around you. Like, I'll talk to people, but then if I'm talking to them for more than 5 minutes and I realize I can't leave the conversation, I become internally stressed. To the point where when I finally do get home or get away from that situation, I want to breathe fast, I want to sit down and take a nap. I just don't like hanging around people. It annoys me. and I just need to have quiet time. And having a job where I can work from home, having a business where I can work from home, even though I have other physical stuff to do, it's not answering to someone who is making you do stuff that you don't want to do. It gives me immense peace. So I would say that you're an INFP or an introvert, find a job where you can enter data, work behind the scenes, not be up in public, or be in a place that's more quiet than usual. Because one of the things that will make an INFP insane and literally go crazy is if they have to be around people. I also moved out from my parents. As soon as I moved away from my parents and I moved in with my boyfriend, who's now my husband, oh, it just, oh my God, the silence was so good. Like, not having 4 other people in the house calling you every minute to the point where you start to hear your name echoing in your own ears when they're not even calling you. It was starting to make me cry. For days, I would curl up in my room and sob because I couldn't get any privacy and I couldn't get any alone time. And my mom understood and she felt for me. And I know it's not her fault because it was her house. She was pulling most of the money in for the house. So, but it still is annoying when I'm on the toilet trying to use it and she's opening the door to come talk to me or show me her dresses. And I'm like, and I can't be like, Mom, fuck off, because that's not our culture. She'll slap me across the room. Like, you don't say that to your mother, you know? And even if I do say it to her, she doesn't get the concept. Like, you're not allowed to lock doors in her house. You're not allowed to go out and have a boyfriend. Like, there's just certain things that were just driving me nuts. And I can tell you, without honesty, I was highly unstable. I felt like I wanted to commit suicide. Like, you'd be surprised. One of an introvert's biggest Achilles heels is not being able to be alone and have quiet time away from people. So now that I have that, my husband's an INTJ. Sometimes he'll even come in and be a little more affectionate, and it drives me crazy sometimes because I'm like, no, I don't want to go away. I love you, but I just want to process right now. I want to sit down on my feelings and listen to myself and then just ruminate on what I'm ruminating on. But now that he's busy with his programming, he also works from home. I get a little bit more quiet time. I get to feel at ease. I get to go outside and sniff the air, and I feel at peace. Now, I will admit, honestly, like right now, because the place where we're living has become more inhabited, the older people are dying off and noisier people are moving in with big families, and we're too close together, I am starting to get to that point again. It's good that it's outside, but it's annoying when I wake up in the morning and to take the dogs out to use their bathroom and to do their business, and we're literally right next to someone. We share a driveway, sort of, with the fence separating it. You can hear what's going on in their house at all hours of the day. You can see people walking. I have never lived in a place that wasn't a cul-de-sac before. And yeah, I'm bougie. Maybe I'm too spoiled. But this is the first time I've had this experience where cars are driving by and people are looking at you and you can't have a moment of fucking peace when you're outside. And I know it's coming through in my voice right now, but I want to be totally transparent with you. It is getting to that point again, and we are planning to move in, very, very, very soon, like a few months to a year, to a place with like 20 acres where there are no neighbors, and that is priority for me. So if you have all those things, then you're totally fine. But if you don't, you can become an emotional wreck because it's like your little bird that's trapped in a hamster cage. You can't spread your wings, you can't sing, you can't get away from when there's danger and you feel unsafe. It feels like that, and you have to just get yourself out of that situation, and you'll never find peace until you get yourself out of that situation. You could try to stave it off by meditating or doing what you can in the meantime, but if this becomes a prolonged thing, that could lead to a lot of problems that you'll need to see a psychiatrist for. Anyway, I know that was long, but I wanted to give detailed examples. From my point of view, I know this doesn't speak for everyone or not all INFPs, but that was to answer the question. Thanks for watching Brain vs. Heart. If you guys have any other questions, just